Oh, here we are, the Lowdown with Tony Lowe. This is episode 15 with Jeremy Wadsworth, a photojournalist from the Toledo Blade, whose pictures are absolutely wonderful. I will say, I don't always read the Blade articles, but when I do, it's because I saw a photo taken by this guy. So welcome to the party, man. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you? Good to be here.
I'm okay. All things considered, it's a wild time in America.
Yes, it is.
So.
Yes, it is.
And I guess that's why I was excited to talk to you because, you know, many of the people who watch this show are interested in Toledo and are alive, obviously. And it's a crazy time to be alive. People are questioning what is real information, where can they tune in to find out what's happening, and they are turning to each other and turning to social media. And I guess the first thing that I want to talk about is how you got into journalism. And I would love it if we could somehow frame it in a context of what does journalism even mean to you, and how do you play a part in it?
Yeah. No, those are good questions. Well, I started at a very young age. I had my first published picture when I was 14 years old in the Clyde Enterprise. You may remember that publication. It doesn't exist anymore. It used to be that weekly in Clyde.
Sure.
And ever since then, I sort of got the bug. I really enjoyed seeing the picture that I made in print. And my uncles had a dark room. I learned in there. And then I went to college, went to Ohio University, got my degree there. And I think I've had a camera in my hand every day of my life since 14, 15 years of age through now. So that's kind of how I got started. So,
yeah.
But what does journalism mean to me? I mean, I think it's really what it's about is informing people, letting them know what's going on in their community, so they know what's going on, and hopefully giving a better understanding of what's going on. Going beyond the surface, digging deep, and really explaining what's going on, and hopefully why. I think that's the crux of it right there.
Well, it's interesting because, as a photojournalist, I think photographs are really interesting because in some ways, the photo never lies. And in some ways, the photograph always lies, because we surround what we see with our own implicit, either biases or just what we know about or what we see, what we like to see, and what we've heard about a story. But the picture itself really reveals something that is pure of a moment. Obviously colors are filtered and the angle is special and the wind is maybe right or wrong depending on what you want to catch. But you're filtering our human experience. And what does that feel like to have that responsibility when you have hundreds of photos to pick from to publish from an event, and you say, really, this is the one that captures it? How do you decide on that?
Well, that's a really good question, because when you go to an event, be it a news event, it could be a sporting event, it could be something very sad. The idea is to try to give the reader an idea of what's going on and trying to compress it all, at least into. Sometimes you can only do it in one picture because of space, especially in the printed edition of the newspaper. Now we're online. We have unlimited space. We can do a photo gallery, even videos and whatnot to help tell the story. But I think what it is just try to, to show it to them in a way that's honest. I know what you mean, when you're talking about filters, perspectives. Everybody comes in with their own history, how they see things. And I think it's important to try to keep an open mind to everybody and what's going on. Politics, for instance, okay, it's a big thing. Always has been, but now it's like a really crazy thing. And I think it's important, to be unbiased, treat everybody with respect, be fair, try to not try to make somebody look bad purposely in a picture. regardless of political affiliation. Sometimes they do that on their own and it's their fault, but
Yeah.
it's not something that I'm trying to do, if that makes any sense.
So you kind of view your role as a window for people to view things that they
Yeah,
weren't there for, but you're not trying.
yeah,
And I ask because you have been photographing much of the unrest and many of the current events and the struggles and the strife of
yeah,
Americans. And
yeah.
but when you're shooting those shots, you're not thinking to yourself that you want to capture something to make any kind of statement. You really feel that your job is to capture the moment the best that you can as it appears.
Yeah, my goal is to definitely not to editorialize anything. You photograph what's there, present it as it is, so people can make up their own minds. And
Yeah.
if they look at a picture and they see something in that, they're going to draw their own conclusions based on how they think. It's funny. When I first started at the Blade about 20 years ago, people would make cracks that, well, we're a real liberal newspaper. Okay. Nowadays, I hear, well, you're a very conservative newspaper now, and I think it just depends on what you take to it. You come to an event, you photograph it, and like Donald Trump has visited Toledo multiple times. You go, he's a president, you photograph him, you photograph the protesters, you try to show both sides of the issue. And depending on your own perspective, you're going to pick it up, you're going to look at it. And if you're a big Trump supporter, depending on what you're looking at, you may, oh, that's great, there's a picture of Donald Trump. Or you might be like, oh, all these protesters, the Blade's so biased or whatever, and vice versa. People draw their own conclusions, and they should draw their own conclusions.
Yeah.
I feel I'm there to record let me put it to you this way. I feel like I have a front row seat to history, especially right now. And I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this. I think it's a very big responsibility to let people know what's going on, not just in the realm of politics, but health and safety things. Especially right now with the pandemic, it's changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
My colleagues and myself have pretty much been out in it since the beginning, photographing either what's not going on anymore or what's still going on, what's opening up, and the safety guidelines that go with it. So I think it's important to be open and honest, and I know fake news gets thrown around a lot. I'll say this: I think the best place you can go is your local news. I think the local journalists in Toledo and Bowling Green, they really experience everyday people in everyday life, and they see what's going on. I don't think there's any agendas driving anything.
Well,
So I can speak to that.
I think people, certainly everyone in every field has an agenda, but what people forget is that, and this is something we talk a lot about on the show,
Yeah.
the news is kind of a processed thing that is okay. Let me stop and say it differently. When the news reader or viewer or whatever consumes the news product,
Okay.
we tend to think of it like I'm seeing advertisements, and that's basically I'm paying my attention for this news, and I expect the quality product. But in reality, if I tune into some major corporate news network, they're not actually trying to deliver to me a quality news product necessarily. Their bottom dollar depends on them delivering me to their advertisers who actually pay them. So in other words, with the local news, at least the drivers of the supply and demand of information is local people. Local news organizations are actually quite in peril. If they have not been bought out by some corporate network, they're really if you want to know what's going on in your community,
Mhm.
we would all be better off to get all of our people we know to invest in our local news sources and really empower them to deliver us information about our community. And I think that so many people just want to hear things that are uh, in line with their personal beliefs, and you can find a network just for that, and it'll make you
Well,
angry, or it'll hit it'll trigger your dopamine or whatever.
yeah. So you're talking about, you're talking about national, like Fox and CNN and those big networks
Those are
that,
examples, yeah.
yeah. Well, okay. So pick your network or whatever. I think a lot of that comes. Let me put it to you this way: I think the journalists out there doing the work every day are really trying to present the facts, the news. Um, I think when you get into corporate ownership, I think you obviously you take what's the guy's name that owns Fox, Rupert Murdoch.
Okay.
He probably has some sort of an agenda. I mean, I don't want to really speculate what he does or doesn't do, or the folks that own CNN, companies that own CNN, whoever owns CNN. I honestly don't know, but I think that, yeah. I mean, I can't disagree really with what you're saying at all. But I think on the local level, I think your actual on the ground journalists, the writers, the photographers, the videographers, I think that their work product, they're really trying to inform. I really do.
Well, I think it's important to remember too that journalists, by and large, are out there just capturing what they see. There's a
Exactly.
difference between a journalist who is recording what will be known as history, and
Yeah.
there are news writers and news reporters and companies that process the journalistic information into news. So when you're talking about journalists, the person that if you talk about Fox and CNN, the people that are on those shows that are kind of processing the news or who own the corporations, they're not as close to the journalists who gathered the information
That's
as
true.
would be your
That's
local
true. Yeah,
like
that
the
is true.
Toledo Blade. You probably come in and your colleagues are people who work at all levels of the paper.
Right.
And
Yeah, no, that's true.
CNN, you could do journalistic work for them and never even put your foot inside one of their offices.
Yeah, no, that's true. Um, I think one of the things that, that kind of fogs things up a bit is when you take a network and they have their news broadcast, like, I don't know, 6 to 7 o'clock or whatever, and then it's sandwiched in between opinion shows.
Yes.
You have your different personalities, and each network has their own slants, and then I think that's where it gets confusing, because if you turn on Sean Hannity, he's coming from a conservative viewpoint. If you turn on Rachel Maddow, she's more of a liberal. And I don't think those individuals really hide that they're commentators, but I think when you turn on the television and you watch whoever goes on before them present the news, and then an hour later one of them comes on and they're just basically telling you what they think, unfiltered, really. Generally speaking, sometimes they'll have a guest and it turns into a big shouting match, or you get 6 talking heads trying to talk over each other. Then I think that's more entertainment, and I think that you're going to tune into whatever your leanings are, and so you can feel good about your thoughts. If that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah.
Um,
I worry. I worry about Americans' ability to be media literate in this age
yeah,
where we actually have far more access to information than we can process. And so
yeah,
you find people falling into extreme conspiracy theories on social media. And
yeah,
if a person only watches one channel or one major, one of well, I'll just come right out and say it.
yeah.
MSNBC and Fox lean
Right.
far to the left and right. And if
Exactly.
you're
That's
just
true.
watching one or the other, your worldview will dramatically shift to the point
Yeah.
where if you turn in, because I do this to compare and contrast, but if I
Mhm.
watch the Tucker Carlson show, I'm 100% sure that we're being overthrown by socialists who want to erase history and defund God. If I watch MSNBC, if I watch Rachel Maddow's show, I'm 100% sure that the president is a Russian asset, and
Yeah.
and we are actually on the verge of complete dictatorship. Now, I
Right.
have my personal opinions about this, and
I'm sure.
where my, you know,
Yeah.
ultimately though, I will say that they've all jumped the couch pretty severely. We have major problems and real
Yeah.
threats to this nation, and they're never as simple as they come on, like it would be an 80s action film where there's some invading force.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and let me just ask you. I mean, if you say, okay, if you take the Fox broadcast and the MSN, since we're talking about those two, and you watch their news hour, and I don't know who actually reads the news on each one of those because I don't. I do my news differently, okay, but I know that they have a news hour. I don't know what, like 5 to 6 or 7, and then the opinion shows start. I would venture to say that probably there's really not a lot of difference in what they're presenting as fact. Now, they may leave some things out or they emphasize something else a little bit more. But then when you get into these, I know what you're talking about. Those shows, yeah, you're right. And then
Well,
you get these blurred lines of, well, what's the news and what's
I see them
entertainment.
even in their regular news shows. The
Okay.
major networks cherry pick what they report on
Okay.
and
Okay.
how,
Yeah.
and just the phrases they use and the things they highlight, so
This is what probably I'm biased because I've always been a print guy.
yeah.
Because I think you get more. And this is nothing against my TV friends because I
No,
love them
no.
all these, they're all good people, the people that I know anyway. But I think when you can put together a news piece in a newspaper on the internet, you get this long form journalism, and if you get past the headline and you read the entire story all the way through, you're gonna get that balance by the time it's over if it's done correctly. And I'm sure sometimes it's not done correctly because everybody makes mistakes. Trust me, I know. But I think the intent is there to try to present a balanced news story. And the idea is you have three named sources, and you talk to as many people as you can, and you try to present it in a way that's more than 30 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever the heck they give you on TV these days. And you can actually sit there, digest it, maybe go back, reread it if something's a little unclear,
Yeah.
and then you're always going to get an in-depth follow-up along the line if it's done correctly in a newspaper. That's there's my bias, Tony. I prefer the print journalism, and I have all the news apps on my phone, and I'll get a headline, and I'm like, whoa. But then
Oh yeah.
I'm the guy that reads further. I'm like, okay, they
Yeah.
wanted me to click on this, but
Right.
now that I read it, it's like, okay,
Jeremy, you are a mature consumer of news, and you would think so since you do it for a living. So
Yeah, this is one thing I'll say. I think if you really want to be, I'm not, watch Fox, watch MSNBC, watch CNN, read The Hill, read the New York Times, read the Washington Post, and read the Toledo Blade, please. That's my plug. Read whatever, and then form your opinion after you've looked at all these different outlets, and then you can form your own opinion. Because I think that's what you have to do nowadays with all the noise, and it's hard to do because who
yeah.
has time to do all that, man?
So what have been kind of your hot stories? Like obviously COVID and Black Lives Matter protests,
Yeah.
uprisings. I like to call it uprisings.
Yes, I understand.
It does, you call it what you call it, but whatever it
Yeah.
is. I'm curious, what are some stories from the streets? Like you're out there taking photos in all kinds of hot button, issues that we have all, well, I have been out there for the protests.
Yeah.
That said, what's your take as you've been on the street from, on all these different perspectives?
Well, it's interesting because there's multiple protest groups in Toledo. Um, there's some that have recently split apart for various reasons. Um, and the two that I've covered the most, Toledo Together, which is students, UT students.
Okay.
And then there's another group, High Frequency, and they're run well. It's one guy now that runs it. And they're trying to draw attention to their beliefs, their cause, and everything. They've had quite a few protests. They've kind of slowed down recently, but I think they got their message across.
Have you been in the mix of any of the?
Yeah, I tell you, well, so most of them, I would say the ones I've been at, all they've been very peaceful. There was one that kind of got a little out of hand. So there's a story going on with a member of the Bedford schools. He's a member of their school board, and he has a long history of actually posting things on social media that are offensive to different groups of people.
Sure.
He regards it as a joke. He's having fun, I guess. He thinks it's all funny. He does seem to attack everybody or make fun of everybody. I'll say that much. But he's a member of the school board, and there's a lot of people that take offense to the things that he posts and thinks that he shouldn't be posting it. And it kind of all happens with everything that's going on. And there was a high frequency protest. They marched. They started at Secor. See where they Secor and Stearns, I want to say, and they marched all the way up to the guy owns a gun store too, on top of being a school board member. And they were going to march up in front of his business and protest. Well, they got there, and he had all his group of people, and they were a lot of them were armed. I will say some of the members of the protest group were armed as well. And that had a lot of potential to, it could have gotten ugly. It could have gotten violent. It didn't really. Yeah, there's one of the pictures there. There's some of the guy's name is Todd Bruning. He runs the Todd's Guns. He owns it, I should say. And these are some of his buddies out there, kind of waving their flags and kind of having their, I guess, counter protest, for lack of a better term. And they were waiting, and there was a lot of shouting back and forth between the groups. There was a couple of shoving matches. Police stepped in, separated them, did a good job. They kept their cool, just made sure they let them, talk back and forth, just kind of kept them separate so nothing would happen. And then eventually, when the high frequency was done, they turned around and they marched back to where they had started. And that was sort of the end of it. There was a high potential there for violence. Just the fact that there were people that were armed.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have taken much to set it off, I don't think.
Let me tell you, when I was at the first, right after the people started knowing about George Floyd,
yeah,
I was at that first Toledo event for Black Lives Matter, and the mayor Wade was there, and I even took a photo with him.
Yeah, I think I did.
It was actually a really beautiful protest, totally calm. I thought the police were kind. And then after the speakers had done speaking and everything, it seemed like there was an element of people, and I'm not trying to propagate any conspiracy theories that there's outside agitators. I know people talk about that. What I'm saying is there was just a group of people with a different flavor of expression, and they were yelling and being very aggressive. Yeah. Soon after, the police very much brutalized many of the people who were at the event. And I don't know what to say about it. I would never want to put you on the spot because you do work for the Toledo Blade, but I do want to kind of know, have you seen any, let me ask it this way. Have you been to any events where you found yourself wondering, I guess what have you seen that has either cemented or loosened your relationship to law enforcement?
Well, I wasn't at that particular event where things kind of got out of hand. I was actually doing the fluffiest fluff pieces on a art installation in Louisville, Ohio, which Umbrella Alley, where they have 185 umbrellas hanging over this, which was it's a really cool place, but it's not answering your question.
Yeah, but that is a worthy
Yeah, it
worthy.
was nice.
Yeah.
That's where I was at. My personal experience, I haven't had any. My most recent experience with the police had to happen this weekend with the officer that was killed in the line of duty. And I was there yesterday, or yeah, was it no? What days run together? It was it was Saturday. It was 4th of July. Yeah, that's the picture right there. And it's just such a sad moment, and I got to be honest with you, man. That was a really hard thing to see, and um,
Can you tell a little bit about the story behind Officer Dia? Because although locally many have heard the story, some may have not. But Officer Dia, a young officer, was killed in
yeah,
the line of duty.
yeah, he responded to a call at the Home Depot parking lot. The man drunk. Apparently, I don't know all the. I read the details, but apparently he turned around, surprised him, shot him, killed.
He was responding to a call from Home Depot that there was a man who
Yeah,
was drunk, and the man I gather was known to frequently have some kind of issues, and
yeah, he had problems.
he
He
was,
had history, yeah,
which I have compassion for. The
yeah,
people who are mentally ill or disturbed or maybe on substances. They're not people to look down on. It means that they're not being served in some kind of way, and that doesn't mean that people get a pass for shooting people. That's not what I'm saying.
No, yeah, I don't really know a lot about the guy. I know that he turned around and he fired and he shot the police officer. And he's young. He's 26 years old. Had a wife, 2 kids. And then he left the scene and killed himself. Um, but
I know nothing about him, but I know that no sane person does that.
well, yeah. I mean, yeah. But anyway, it was just a very sad moment in time. Yes, on the 4th of July with what happened to him. Very emotional. Community members coming out to show their support. The wife and the kids were there. It was hard. It was a hard thing to photograph. It really was.
Uh,
Uh,
Jeremy, has it been, sorry to interrupt you, has it been heartening for you the way it was for me that in this time of, disputes between citizens and police force, I thought it was very nice that, I mean, it's never nice when a man is killed in the line of duty. I don't mean that. What I mean is after that happened, I really felt like the community did come together and in support of the officer. And I was worried that I would see because a lot of us are not pleased with how we're served by the police, but this isn't one of those. And it really felt a lot like the community rallied behind Officer Dia.
it seems to be there's been a lot of, from what I've read and seen, a lot of support for the family and the police and him. Yeah, I would agree that yeah, the whole thing is just sad. It's been a year, man. I mean, with the coronavirus kicking things off, so to speak. and then, you know, the civil unrest that we've had, and then an event, and then for this to happen on the heels of all that, it's been a tough time to to be around, you know, to experience and to, you know,
It's
to do the job,
it
you know.
it has been unbelievable for everyone, but
No,
what a responsibility to document it.
yeah, yeah.
You know, you had said that you have a front row for history, but the truth is,
Mhm.
Jeremy, that it's not history until it's been documented. You know, history is
Well,
the
yeah,
recording of what happened, and you're recording all of this that's happening.
yeah, yeah. The news is the first rough draft of history, they say.
I like that. That's a good way to
Yeah,
look at it.
yeah. But yeah, you know, I know I don't really want to get into, you know, my personal thoughts on police or protesters. I approach every event, every issue, trying to just show what's there, you know. And
Hmm.
I think by doing that, I think I can bring credibility to what I do. I hope. Uh, I would hope that I could go into a, you know, Donald Trump press or a rally and photograph that, and have the people there understand that I'm treating them fair, and then go to a well, like Joe Biden now, go into one of his events, photograph them, and understand and hope that they would feel that they were being treated the same. You know, I don't put bumper stickers on my car. I don't put political signs
Right.
on my car. I and you know what I found, honestly, in the years I've done this is, and most people are pretty good regardless of their affiliations, and then on a one-on-one basis,
Yeah.
they're good people. They have
Nobody
different ways of thinking, and
nobody
you never always, what's that?
nobody hates the people that they actually know.
Yeah,
It's always like,
and that's the thing. It's
yeah. And that's probably why I like your photography, because I do find it to be very a skillful document of a moment, and I don't ever feel, you know, a lot of times you see photographs and they're beautiful works of art, you know, where the photographer has, you know, gotten in just the right place where the flaming building is behind the flag in just a certain way that, you know, captures a certain feeling. And I feel like your work is the opposite of sensational. It's more just a pure, I think of your work as situational portraits, if you will.
hmm, interesting. Well, if you can look at my work and you can and not feel like I'm, you know, trying to propagandize you in any way, or if you have that experience like you just, I like the way you describe that, then I'm doing my job, because I really I learned a long time ago, you know, and it, everybody has their own experience. Everybody
That's
has
right.
their own. They're bringing everything that makes up their life to that point, and in 10 years they may be thinking totally different, and you just don't know. You don't know what that guy's been
That's
through.
right.
You just don't know, and you get somebody out there who's angry or saying things that just sound repulsive to you. Okay.
Yeah.
And I can't, and I've seen a lot and heard a lot of stuff, but I don't know what that person's experience is.
I have a friend that's a Buddhist teacher, and he always says we're just comparing hallucinations.
Interesting, yeah. Well, I've never heard that, but that's interesting. That's very interesting.
I want to throw up some images on the screen of photos that I grabbed from your portfolio, and just I wonder if I put them up, maybe you can just comment a little bit on them, and then we'll wrap up and just kind of,
All
if
right,
you
man.
can tell us what was happening, and maybe if it's appropriate what you were feeling or what was the energy in the air, you know, whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
So let's look at this one.
Okay, so I can see the picture here. Hold on a second. It looks like I can only see the top of it, but I know. Oh, there. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So, this is that rally we were discussing earlier in Bedford. Where things were looking kind of sketchy there for a little while, and one of the things I've noticed in the groups of protesters, there's a lot of Caucasian people and African American people together, protesting, and sometimes there's actually more white folks than there are African Americans. Not always. It's a
Well,
mix of people.
it is Toledo and
Yeah, right.
and the
Yeah.
surrounding area.
Yeah, but to me, what I was thinking in this picture was just I don't know exactly what I was consciously thinking, but just to see them join arms like that, it just kind of I don't know, just a sense of unity that they were, that they were projecting. I felt that was something that was kind of a quieter moment in all the chaos that I felt would add to the coverage.
Yeah, to me the white girl looks fierce, and the white woman, I should say, and the black woman looks kind of emboldened by the
That's
camaraderie.
true. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely in it together for sure.
Yeah. And what about, let's check out this one. That's the same one. Hold on a sec.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Let me see how I can. I think I was showing you the same one. Here,
Okay, yeah.
Let me do this better. Sorry, pal.
Okay.
I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah, no problem.
Technology, man.
Oh, I tell you.
Well,
Okay. Yeah, okay.
still the same one, right? What are you seeing right now? Are you seeing this one with the gentleman shaking hands?
Yeah. So this was a different protest. This was a little bit of a smaller one. This was a different group of citizens up in Point Place. They were
Okay.
having their own protest, and I don't think they were affiliated with any of the groups that I'm aware of. It was kind of one of these spontaneous protests, I suppose. But what was interesting here is you had the police officer come over, and he shook hands with the gentleman who was leading the protest, and he basically just said, hey, we're here to watch out for you. We're not going to interfere, and they shook hands, and that's really how it went. They sort of stayed out of the way. They made sure traffic, was stopped for them as they marched, and that was about it. That's pretty much what happened. They marched around the Point Place area, and when they finished, it was over. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that and I think it's back to the local thing. The local, when you can just go up and talk to somebody, and have that exchange, and it de-escalates tensions. I think when you can just have a conversation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if what about this one right here?
Yeah. Okay, so this one was from that protest in Bedford. This is where things were a little we're kind of getting a little out of control. And what you see here is one of the it's a Monroe County Special Response team member in the center, and what he's basically doing is just keeping everybody separated, and there's some yelling going back and forth between each side of the protest. And but they really, I mean, I'll have to say they really pretty much they just stood there and made sure that, nobody got hurt really.
The officer has a patch.
What's that?
This officer has a patch on his camouflage that says "Stay classy."
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't see. I honestly, when I made the picture, I didn't see that. I was I was looking at the faces really. What made me make this picture was the look of the guy on the right. That's Julian Mack. He's one of the protesters around Toledo, and then the other, I don't know who the other guy is. It's just that kind of exchange between the two of them, and the guy in the center, okay, let's just stay apart kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, I got this one really. You sent me a whole folder of these photos, and hold on, let me get the one I'm trying to find here.
Oh yeah, yeah. So this is a picture story essay that I worked on a couple years ago, a year and a half ago,
Yeah,
and this was interesting. Um, I was at an event on Adams Street. It was called Toledo Love Fest, I think is what they called it.
yeah,
And it's just, it's kind of a celebration festival for members of the LGBT community, LGBTQ community, and they had a drag queen show. And I'm photographing it, and I see this young man who's dressed up and doing his performance, and I was like, wow, man, this person's young. I was kind of like, I need to find out more about this, and so I made the pictures, and everybody I photographed, for the most part, I try to talk to them, get their name, find out their information, that kind of thing. And I did. I found his mom and talked to him.
this
And
is a
so this was
child.
yeah, 9 years old.
Yeah,
Yeah, at the
this is
time, he was nine
this is
years
a
old.
child, and they're doing a dance in drag,
Yeah,
and there are adults throwing money at the child.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It makes you stop and you think about it for a few minutes, what's going on, and then the whole scene and everything. And I made these pictures and several. This was just one aspect of the assignment. But I was thinking about it for a couple of days, and I kept going back to it, and I don't know why. It was just something in my mind kept bringing me back to this. And Pride Week was coming up, and at the time we were really trying to tie in our digital product to events that were upcoming and that kind of thing. And I got thinking about it. I'm like, this might be an interesting story to go and run during Pride Week, to kind of, we could tie it in and with all the events going on and the parade and everything. So I pitched it to an editor, and they were on board with it. And I called the mom. I talked to her, very nice lady, and they agreed to let me hang out with them for a while. And I went to his house, and I photographed him practicing and his costumes. And then ultimately I ended up at a drag show that he was performing in, which was really interesting. And we ran it on the Sunday during Pride Week, the day of the parade. I actually went and shot the parade too, and I updated the photo gallery, and we ran a magazine page on them too that week. And it was all about, but I mean, we covered the other events too, but it was just something to get people thinking about, that week, that, and everything that goes on with that. It was something very different that we
Well,
had never had before.
my only concern,
Yeah.
I I'm inserting my own opinion into your photojournalistic. I know you're not, but
Yeah.
no, I'm a big supporter of the freedoms of all Americans, and I do question, though, how healthy it is that the adults were making the decision to make the show of the money and the
Yeah.
kind of the making it into their entertainment. Feels a little in that way. Doesn't feel healthy. Now I don't know enough about the situation, but there's something about it. It doesn't feel. It's not the young person and their expression of their
Hmm.
their
Yeah.
sexuality and their expression, but however the adults who are making it into a striptease sort of vibe doesn't
Well,
feel.
yeah. Valid points. Trust me, there was some blowback. But one of the reasons we went on ahead with the story is he wasn't doing strip teases at all. And the money, it wasn't the money that was given. If I remember correctly at the time, it was going towards, I think, a college fund of some kind, but it wasn't like. So let me put it to you this way: I don't know if you've ever been to a drag show or not, but
I have.
okay, so you know how it is. These guys get up there, but this young man was kept in a room away from all that. And when he came out and danced, everybody was very respectful. Very cheered him on, applauded him. None of that other stuff that happens.
Well,
And
it's a funny thing because as we were saying, when we see an image, it's loaded for us, and so even me being a very so-called woke person,
yeah,
I'm bringing my own biases about what the adult's relationship to the situation is, and I just
yeah,
think
well,
it's interesting,
well, yeah, and it was one of those things. It was one of those things where I was curious as to what was going on multiple fronts, and as a journalist, I wanted to answer those questions.
Right?
And I didn't want to shy away from something just because it might be controversial, or you want people to think. You want them to think about what's going on, and this made people think. And I get a very divisive response. I mean, there were a lot of people that were very supportive of this young man, and a lot of people that were very against what was going on. But there was a discussion going on, and the way, if I remember correctly, in talking to the young man's mother, I mean, this was something that he organically wanted to do on his own. He I have to refresh my. This was a while ago, but he really liked that RuPaul's drag is what I don't know the name. I can't remember the name of the show. But RuPaul had a show, Drag Queen, right? Drag Race or something like. I can't remember exactly. And he was really into this show, and it's something that he wanted to do. And his parents, I don't think they wanted him to feel like this was something that he shouldn't do. I mean, I don't know that they encouraged it, but they didn't stop it, and they didn't want him to feel like this was something wrong, so they just sort of let him do it. And
Sure.
then he kind of ballooned and balled, and before you know it, he was doing these shows, and that's what
There you
happened.
go.
Now, I don't know if he still does it or not. I know that it was about 6 or 8 months ago, maybe within the last year, that he was doing a show in Columbus, and some of the local folks put a stop to it. It had a lot to do. I don't remember all the ins and outs, but he may still be doing it. He may not be. But it was one of these things where the parents were letting him be him, and not trying to make him feel like that there was something wrong with him. They didn't want him to feel that way, and I know that. And I don't know. I don't know what his leanings are in reality. He's 9. I'm not that. Never. We don't get into that because
all we need to know is that's a young person figuring out how to best express what they're feeling inside. And it's great that the parents are encouraging the journey, and we hope that the journey goes through a safe patch of woods. Because
and I think that the kid was pretty protected. Really, I hope. I mean, that was my impression. It really was. I mean, it seemed like everybody really gave him some respect in those situations. I mean, I had watched some of the other performers before he went on, and getting set up and everything. And when he came out, it was like everybody just changed their mood. Did everybody? You just kind of sit up, straighten your coat a little bit, and it's like, okay, mom and dad's in the room now, and we're going to behave, kind of thing. For lack of a better way of explaining it, but I don't know. It was not without controversy. It really wasn't. But I didn't want to not do the story just because some people might get upset, so to speak.
Yeah.
You got to challenge people. You got to show them what's going on. You don't want to just show them the fluffy kayakers every day. I mean, it's
Right.
stuff that we do, but there's bigger issues out there, and I think that's what we need to do is put a spotlight on our community, every aspect of our community, let people know what's going on, and form, they can form their own opinions. We didn't add to or sugarcoat it in any way. We just, okay, this is what he's
Right.
doing. This is what's going on. This is
You're,
how he's doing it. And
you're starting a conversation.
then that's the end of the story. And then whatever happens from there,
Yeah.
people like your reaction. I mean, we discuss these things in meetings too, and both myself and the reporter kind of came to the conclusion that, this kid just kind of having, fun, for the most part. Beyond that,
Yeah, well, we forget how much young people are sexualized.
Yeah.
But it's just that it doesn't challenge our ideas of gender norms, and so we let it slide.
So here's another interesting aspect to the story. This kid can really dance very well.
Right.
I mean, really well. And he made these older guys look kind of bad in terms of actual dancing skills.
Oh, that's
I mean,
great.
he could go out there. The move that you saw, that picture you put up, is where I forget what he called it. I can't remember anymore. But he basically jumped up and did the splits and landed back. I mean, it was the most insane thing I've ever seen. And he practices it, he's got a trampoline and he does all this stuff. And it's just like, okay, so that's in the best day, the best shape of my life, I could have never have done that.
Let's look at one more, because this is another really important bit of the current conversation. Let me find the one I'm trying to, not that
Okay.
one, although I do like. Which one are you looking at? What can you see right
So it's the guy with the hood and the Ohio flag and in front of the State House there in Columbus.
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm trying to get it where I can look at it with you, and I'm failing.
Okay.
But go ahead and tell us what we're looking at.
Okay, so this is when Ohio started to exercise their COVID restrictions. Closing the bars and restaurants. Going to takeout only. The social distancing. All the protocols that were going into effect to keep people from spreading the virus, and hopefully staying under the curve, and keeping the hospitals at a level where they could manage the crisis. There are a group of people in Ohio who they protested. I mean, they wanted Ohio to remain open, and they had a totally different view than what the governor had, and they had multiple protests, especially at the State House. This was one of the bigger ones. It was they called it the Open Ohio Now rally, or Free Ohio Now rally, and they had about 500 or so people attend this thing at various points throughout the day. I'd say little to no mask wearing, no social distancing for the most part, and they basically stood in front of the Capitol building and were demanding that Ohio reopen and end the restrictions. That's what that was about.
I'm a little hyper vigilant just because of whatever the life that I have had.
Mm-hmm.
You know where my eye goes when I look at this photo immediately?
Where's that?
What is in Homeboy's socks?
Yeah, good question. I don't know, but at this protest, like at many others, there was a contingent of armed folks. I don't know if you have access to that picture, or I don't know. Well, I can't remember everything.
I did see it.
But most of these things, they just stand there and hold them. I don't even know if they're frankly loaded, but Yeah, it could be. I mean, people come ready for whatever. And the other protests too. There's always somebody with something strapped to their waist or their
Well,
side.
it's a culture war thing, and people want to make us
Yeah.
try to be the embodiment of every stance they have about all the culture war issues at once. So
Yeah,
one of
you know,
them's
it was.
Second Amendment rights, and that means I have to show you the gun that I have.
Yeah, you know, it actually, you make a point that there were people there that were, you know, most of it free Ohio, but part of it turned into a Trump rally. Part of it was an anti-abortion rally. Part of it was the Second Amendment. I mean, it was
Anti-vaxxers,
like the representation of everything,
yeah.
really, that you would expect. And there, you know, so you know, I go there and I photograph it, and I whatever they're doing, I try to hopefully make an interesting set of pictures that tell a story, you know.
Jeremy, I've learned something from you, which is I was wondering, how someone in this time gets photos from such a wide swath of topical situations, if you will. And I think you're answering it by you are very truly, as your lens is, an invisible observer when it comes to when you show up. You're not injecting any of yourself. You are really just a lens on the scene, and you've dissolved into the
i
air.
really I really, it's something I consciously, maybe I should say it this way, I used to consciously try to be that. I think I'm just that way now, because I really, you know, I don't know really how to articulate it, but it's not my job to take a side or to project myself into the situation. My job is to let anybody that reads our newspaper or you know, looks at my social media channels, whatever, is to just show them something. They can make their own decisions. And it's interesting because you know, on Facebook, I don't do a lot on Twitter. I have some, but mostly Instagram's my favorite. And the reason it's my favorite is because it's just pictures.
Yeah, that makes sense for a photographer.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, I have a very diverse group of friends. Okay, you're one of them.
Yeah,
And I know I watch what you post. I watch what my other friends. I kind of have an idea how you feel and think, and I totally respect it. And I have friends that think a lot differently, and I respect it. You know what? They're my friends. You know, and I I don't know. I'm not trying to sound. I don't want to sound like I'm being ridiculous or anything like that, but I really truly believe that you guys are my friends, so there's something good about you, you know.
yeah,
And you might disagree on everything, but you're still my friends. And I think the readers are the same way. Like, they're all trying to get their information. We're trying to show them something. I'm never going to change anybody. There's certain people that are going to think the way they're going to think, no matter what.
yeah. It's funny, Jeremy, because I think of it like I have I have friends that are libertarians. I have friends that
Mm-hmm.
are socialists. I have
Yeah.
every kind of political stripe. I have friends that are pro-gun, anti-gun, all of the hot button stuff.
Yeah.
But I just draw my only hard line is people people who stand against human rights, and people who want to hurt people, people who people who are bigoted on purpose. I don't
Right.
I have
Yeah.
space for people not knowing that something is
Right.
racist.
Right. No, and I think, I guess in my experience, I get what you're saying. I don't know that I've ever met too many people that are just hateful for the sake of being hateful. Yeah, I mean, I know that they exist, I'm sure, but I think the vast majority of people are not that way. And I think, I mean, and I think I can say this, you know, even from a neutral standpoint. I think that as a society, I mean, we've come to the point where you can't sit down and just have a conversation and agree on 40% in the middle, whatever. Agree to disagree on the other, you know, 30, 40% on each side, and then drink a beer and be done with it. it's got to be, let's crush the other person on social media, or, let's cancel somebody, or let's just, and it's just like, it just doesn't leave room for that conversation that needs to take place, and where we can agree on things and get along. Because the divisiveness is bad. It's corrosive, and as a culture, we can't sustain ourselves this way.
Yeah,
You
people are lacking in the skills to kind of understand, because
Yeah.
because I will say that I have encountered purist active hate from people, and
Okay.
but you have to remember, for a living, I traveled seeking out places where those conversations needed to happen, and so
Sure.
that was that my lens is skewed from doing that professionally. But in terms of the general population, I 100% agree. It's my experience that for the most part, when people hurt each other or are prejudiced against each other, it's because they themselves are fearful or hurting. And if we could get the conversation to the place where we understand, oh, you think that you're going to lose X if I gain Y. And maybe this would be that way. Like if we could get people to let go of their preconceptions enough to have those conversations, most people are pretty open to that. I will say that I know way too many people who are willfully resistant to other people's basic human rights, and that does break my heart.
Right. No, yeah. I mean, no, I can. I mean, there are people like that. I mean, obviously, and I've run into them too. I just generally in speaking, you walking down the street and you meet 10 people, 9 of them are probably pretty good.
And you know what? You said the magic word. If you meet people, they're generally pretty good. And
that's what I do. I meet so many in my career. I've met so many people, so many different people.
Yeah.
And you get a unique perspective from them on different things that most, and maybe in a way because of my job, I get to experience more of diversity amongst than most people would. But it doesn't. I mean, I just think that it adds to my wanting to remain, not new. That's not the right word, but to be objective and to show people what's going on, to show that culture. You go to something that I've never been to. And the young drag queen is a good example of trying to keep an open mind, I think, and just exploring that and seeing what's going on and not judging it, just and presenting it.
Yeah, nothing ever kicked my doors of perception open for understanding LGBTIQ plus citizens like when I moved to the San Francisco Bay area.
Oh, I'm sure.
So living out there, it's really the norm. And even as a personal trainer, I helped people that had transition, surgeries and things, sculpt their new body. Used to living, it becomes not a thing. And you see, I think like step one is you find out that people are not scary or harmful to you when they're different. I'm not saying I thought that, but I'm saying when people are unlearning prejudice, step one is that. And I think a lot of folks think that's where it ends. But then you find out, oh no, the whole breadth of human personality and experience exists in this group too. So it's like you finally get to a place where you're like, there's a person who has whatever trait, and I actually know nothing about them. I don't know that they're bad. I don't know that they're good. I don't know that they're, because that doesn't exist in people. People are complicated, and you just get to know them, and then maybe you like them, maybe you don't, but most of the time you're not going to find some kind of evil Voldemort lurking behind the stranger next door, like.
Right. That's true.
Well, hey man, this was really great. I'm gonna wind it up just for sake of time, and
Okay.
unless there's anything else you want to talk about, is there somewhere you want people to check you out and see your work?
Well, ToledoBlade.com. That's my work's there. My colleagues' work's there. We also have an app called Blade News Slide, which is free, and it's a free
Nice.
download. You can get the news that we put out. It doesn't cost you anything. It's very similar to our website. You can get it on the Android or Apple store. It's
Okay,
free.
cool.
It upgrades every day, and you have access to everything there.
That's
I
fantastic. I
know.
might just do that.
Yeah, it doesn't every, I think it's like, I think 5-6 in the morning. It's just uploads a new edition, and you get all the news of the day there. And then sometimes there's sometimes it gets updated. But usually once a day it's like getting a digital copy of the paper. Um,
Nice. Yeah, I've run
yeah,
into the digital or the paywall in
yeah.
the Blade.
There is a paywall. I local journalism. If you actually get a subscription to the Blade, I don't think it really is that. I don't think anymore it's really that expensive anymore. But I would encourage people to frequent even you're in Bowling Green, the Sentinel. I know they have a web presence too and everything. But I think you get that local perspective on everything. You know,
Priceless.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on. This was a very interesting conversation.
Oh,
Get a
good. I'm
chance to,
glad, dude. I'm glad. And thanks
you
for the excellent work.
I'm glad you're looking at it. Yeah. Hope
It's
you
out
enjoy
there,
it.
man.
What's that?
It's out there, you know. I don't
Yeah,
look for it. It
yeah.
shows up in my life. I'm like, that's another one by Jeremy. Wow. So
Well, that's great, man. I try to post at least some image, at least one image a day. And it doesn't happen every day, but the bulk of the content is reserved for the Blade and the web. My goal is to get people to look at that and hopefully go visit the Blade website. Look at a photo gallery. Maybe if they hit that paywall, maybe subscribe or download News Slide. I mean, it's there. I know all our COVID coverage. I want to say is you can get all of that. You can sign up for an email. They'll email you every update for free every day on that. So,
nice.
so I think and I'm pretty sure we're still doing that. So, yeah,
All
that's
right.
about it.
Well, I'm gonna
Yeah,
stop recording, and you have a great night. Thank you, Jeremy.
yeah, thank you too, man. We'll see you.